These are the top 11 best farms for Minecraft Bedrock I recommend every player has, and these farms will optimize your world and give you a ton of useful materials, resources and XP. So anyways, let's get into it. Number 1. Iron Farm. Now an iron farm is pretty self-explanatory, but you might still be wondering why. Well, it gives you iron, and iron is one of the most important resources in Minecraft, because without iron you won't be able to get diamond or any of the other important resources. Now as you can see, an iron farm is pretty cheap, it doesn't require that many blocks, and it is so good that even if it costed a lot, which it don't, it would still be worth it. So this is why I highly recommend you build an iron farm, and it's honestly one of the first farms I often go for in my worlds. Number 2. Villager Trading Hall, or kind of 1.5. Now I'm counting this as number 1.5 on this list simply because you can integrate this villager trading hall into the first one, as in an iron farm. So instead of building just a basic iron farm, you can actually build an iron farm trading hall instead, pretty much like this one right here. So under here we have a bunch of villagers that you can also trade with, and on top of here we have a spawning platform where iron golems will spawn. And having a trading hall is so important in Minecraft, because from having a trading hall you can buy and trade for so many important things, like for example a bunch of good books and other important resources, like for example golden carrots, emeralds and many other things. And in addition to that, if you zombify certain villagers, you can actually trade one iron ingot for one emerald with certain villagers, which is pretty cool. And this means that from a good iron farm like this, you will actually be able to trade all of this iron, if you don't want to use it, for a bunch of emeralds. Number 2. Food farm. Now as you can see right here, we have a very simple and honestly one of the easiest food farms in Minecraft, and the best thing about it, it is 100% automatic, and it also cooks the food for you, which means that you save coal. So if you look into this chest, as you can see, whenever the chickens die inside there, they will drop cooked chicken and feathers, and cooked chicken is honestly pretty good meat. Now this farm is extremely good, and as you can see, it is also very cheap. It only requires a couple of blocks and a few hoppers and other materials. So number 3. Mob farm. Now having a mob farm in Minecraft is extremely useful, because a mob farm like this one will give you a bunch of useful materials. For example gunpowder, which can be used for rockets once you for example get yourself an elytra, or for example skeletons will drop bones, which can then turn into bone meal, which is very useful for many farms. And you can also get rotten flesh from these zombies, which you can then trade with certain types of villagers to then get emeralds from your iron farm trading hall, for example, which is pretty cool. See, as you can see, this is a pretty cool design that also kills the mobs pretty quickly, which means that it is 100% AFKable, and you can also collect the XP through this piston. And I would highly recommend you build this design, and that is because it is so cheap. And if we head into the farm, you can see that there are no expensive things inside there. The only thing that's inside of here is just trapdoors and more blocks, which just shows how cheap this farm actually is. So yeah, I would highly recommend you build a mob farm like this one, simply because it will highly benefit your Minecraft world, and it is so cheap and very easy to build. Number 4. Item sorter. Now no matter if you want to build a big item sorter like this one or a smaller one like this one, having an item sorter is extremely useful, especially because from just the other farms I mentioned so far, you will end up getting quite a lot of resources that would be so useful to have automatically sorted out. And by being able to automatically sort out your resources, you will save yourself a lot of time. And how an item sorter like this one works is that you will simply dump your inventory into this chest. The items will be sent into a vote stream right here, and if the items can go into this chest, for example, let's say you have diamonds in your inventory, they will go into this chest. If you have gold in the inventory, it will go into this chest, and no gold will go into this chest, and no diamonds will go into any of the other chests. However, if I happen to drop off, for example, anti-pearls, which is not inside this system, they will go into this last chest, which means that you can quite easily find all the items you do not have in the system in the last chests. Number 5. Witch farm. Now if you have ever seen a witch farm online, you might remember people digging out absolutely huge areas into the ground to build one. A witch farm can be as simple as this, a small hut with a couple of blocks and a trident killer. Now you might be wondering, what's the point of a witch farm? Well, a witch farm will give you many other important resources, like for example gunpowder, although we already get gunpowder from a mob farm, but having more of it is always useful. But in addition to that, witch farms will also drop other pretty cool things, like for example redstone dust, glowstone and sugar, and of course some other things like potions, empty glass bottles and even sticks. And as you can see, it's very small, very profitable, and it doesn't even take that long to build. So yeah, I would highly recommend you have something like this in the world if you happen to have a swamp and a witch hut close to your base. Number 6. Gold XP farm. As you can see right here, we have a ticking gold portal farm, which is pretty good because it gives you a bunch of gold but also a bunch of XP. And you can make a simple one like this using one portal, or you can add more portals, which I'll show you in a minute. So if I jump down here, we can see that they are killed in a trident killer, which will give you a bunch of XP if you stand right here. And if we look into the chest under, it will also give you a bunch of gold, which is probably the main resource you will want to get from this. But in addition to that, a farm like this will also give you a bunch of rotten flesh, which you can then use in your trading hall to get more emeralds. However, if this one portal farm is too slow for you, You can also opt for a dual portal farm, as in 2 portals, like for example this one, which will obviously produce twice the amount of piglins, thus meaning twice the amount of XP and twice the amount of gold, which obviously makes this very good. So as you can see, it works pretty much the same. We turn this lever, the portals take off because of the powdered snow inside these dispensers, and then the lava right here turns the portals on, which then just makes them tick and the piglins spawn. And they're obviously brought down these water streams into killing chamber down here, and they are then killed by a trident killer, which will then allow you to get a bunch of gold and XP, and of course rotten flesh if you want to use that to, for example, get emeralds. So anyways, let's head over to number 7, Super Smelter. Now Super Smelter like this one is very useful because I can simply turn it off right here, and then to use it I will simply put the fuel behind here and the items I want smelted inside here, and they will then be sent back and forth right here and distribute those items equally. This means that instead of having to open each furnace and manually put all the items in, I can simply put them into these minecart with chests and they will do it automatically for me. So let's say I have 2 stacks of raw iron. Now we already have some coal in here, so I don't need to worry about that, but what I will do is just put the raw iron inside here, turn on these 2, or at least the top one, and as you can see, it will go back and forth and simply fuel these furnaces with iron, and they will all get an equal amount of iron, which means that all the iron will be smelted at the same time. If I look into this chest now, as you can see, the items are being smelted pretty quickly, so we have 16 iron so far, and soon we will get 8 more, I believe, because we have 8 furnaces. So yeah, now we have went from 16 to 24, which just shows you that this is pretty quick, and you can obviously expand this to be even 16 long or even longer if you want to, which obviously makes having something like this very useful because you can smelt items so much quicker. Number 8, automatic villager crop farm. Now you might be wondering, why do you need an automatic villager crop farm? Because what's the point of farming potatoes and carrots if you can just use the chicken farm for food? Well, there are a few reasons why I would recommend you build something like this. One is that once you build it, you will not have to do anything because it will automatically give you crops. If I head down here, we can look into these chests. You can see that we get crops for pretty much for free. That is pretty useful for a few reasons. One is that you can head into these same villagers and you can trade these exact crops for emeralds. And you can also of course zombify these villagers to get the trades cheaper, which means that you basically have a free emerald farm. In addition to that, like I mentioned, this farm runs 100% automatically, which means that once you build it, you do not need to do anything, which means that you kind of have an automatic emerald farm. But also crops can always be useful to have in case you want to build a bigger crop field outside your base to add some details. So having a farm like this might not be the most useful, but it is definitely nice to just have around in case you need it. Number 9, villager breeder. Now so far I mentioned 2 or kind of 3 farms that require villagers. I mentioned the iron farm trading hall or trading hall in general, and of course via villager crop farm. And for these you will need quite a few villagers. So for example, for the iron farm you will need at least 20 villagers, which means that having a villager breeder like this one is very useful. And as you can see, a villager breeder like this one, it is also very cheap, and it is very useful to have because having to bring villagers back and forth from a village nearby can take a lot of time and be very boring. So that's why I would highly recommend you build a villager breeder like this one. Number 10, Sugarcane Farm. Historically speaking, for me at least, sugarcane farms are one of the farms I always tend to build firstly whenever I start a new Minecraft world. This is simply because having sugarcane that you can then turn into paper is very useful for your first enchanting table, but it is also very useful in later games when you for example need a lot of paper to make rockets. So having a sugarcane farm like this one is very useful, and you can of course start off with just one layer and then add more and more or make it longer as you progress and need more and more paper. And although it does cost a little bit with for example pistons and observers, it is definitely worth it and very useful no matter where in the game you are. Number 11, raid farm. When I said raid farm, you might think this is impossible to build because raid farms seem hard to build, but they really aren't. As you can see, it is pretty simple to construct and pretty safe once you kill a few pillagers that are down here. And if I look into these chests, as you can see, it will give you a bunch of useful resources, and the main ones will of course be the totems of undying, and as you can see we get plenty of them, and of course the emeralds. Now you will also get some other resources that are pretty useful, like for example gunpowder, glowstone dust, sugar, glass bottles, sticks and arrows if you want to keep those. And as you can see, in these chests we have a lot of resources, and you can also get quite a lot of good books. And of course we have even more resources here, so Impaling 4, that's pretty good. This is a pretty decent book, and we just have even more totems and more emeralds, and this is just from a few raids. And it is not even that hard to build, and it is also very useful and very safe to build. So all I need to do is just drink a bad ominous potion, which you will get from the farm down below here, and all you need to do is wait for a raid to start, which you can see by the top of my screen. And once the raid had started, all the raid mobs and stuff will spawn inside the room on top of here, which they will any second now. Boom, and as you can see, they will then be pushed into the trident killer right here, which is on, and they will then be killed, and then the Ravager will be killed by the lava. So anyways guys, that is it for this one, and this was the top 11 farms I recommend every player has in Minecraft Bedrock. So anyways, I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions about any of these farms or anything like that, feel free to comment them down below and I'll try to answer as quickly as possible. Also, all the tutorial links to these farms will of course be linked down below, so check those out if you want to build any of these farms. Anyways, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.